Hi everybody, this is Tracy with the Rhapsody Art Barn coming to you from Salem, Oregon. I have a brick and mortar here where I sell lots of supplies to refinish furniture and home decor and craft multimedia. And so today I am going to be working with resin, tabletop resin actually. I've got some Upstart Epoxy is one of the brands I like. It's very easy to use, and although it still has an odor, it's not a terrible odor. Typically when I'm using resin, I like to pour the resin, work with the resin as quickly as I can, and then take it to a somewhat temperate temperature, moderate temperature room and let it cure overnight and not enter that room. So I try to take it out of my studio, out of my store, and let it sit where there is some heat. It's not gonna get too hot or too cold, but so that it can set up where I don't breathe it in all the time, because there is an odor with resin, and it does take overnight to cure hard. So today I'm doing something a little different. Typically I do art pieces. I've done a lot of art glass, shattered glass, or I'll do like the top of a tray, something like this with the countertop resin, a tabletop, and all of that I enjoy doing, and it's easy and it's similar to what I'm going to do today. But today I've decided to try it on glass, and this is an old window that I've put a transfer on. So this is something that typically you want to seal with some sort of a top coat sealer. I always use furniture grade, decoupage medium, top coat medium. So the paint brands that I carry are DIY paint, and I have Dixie Belle paint. And so typically I will put a top coat, clear coat, whatever you want to call it, water-based sealer over my pieces that have transfers, because you want to seal these. But first of all, transfers do not last outside. They're not UV ray protected, so they'll last maybe a year outside. So these are mostly indoors. So I want to put a glass-like, easy to clean resin coating over this. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to do it over the entire window that's coated. So I have not top coated this. Transfers will stick very well to glass, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to resin. So I'm going to put this down so you can see the project, and then we will start with our two-part tabletop epoxy. So we've got part A, the big A on there, and part B. And there are websites on the Upstart Epoxy website. There are tools to help you decide how much you're going to pour. For this, I just want a thin layer over this. I do not want any extra weight to the mirror. I have some chain I can hang it up with. I like the fact that it's aged. I'm going to keep that look, and I'm just going to do a thin coat over the top, and I'm actually going to use my hands to spread it. But first, you're going to need something to measure out. You can get these cups on Amazon. Typically when you get epoxy in a gallon size, they're going to give you a measuring tub, so you can use it for tabletop or countertops, a big tub. There's a couple different ones. And then often they'll give you stir sticks and something to spread that's disposable. The epoxy, oftentimes, like I said, you can use like credit cards, you can use the stick to use, to spread it around, or you can even use a gloved hand. So this stuff, I always use gloves when I'm working with the tabletop epoxy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize one of their little sticks that they've given me. It's just a stir stick. I'm going to do equal parts in this cup that I have. Resin does not stick to plastic, so you reuse these. However, as long as you keep them separated. So I have another plastic cup to put them into. So I'm gonna do equal parts, like I said, and I'm gonna mix up quite a bit. So I'll do, because I have a couple things I can resin, I can use it with. So I'm gonna do 6 ounces of each. Like I said, I'm not measuring this I'm measuring each one to make sure they're even, but I'm not measuring how much to use on this because I am not going to make it a thick, full tabletop piece. Excuse me, I'm dropping things here. So typically one of these is more liquid than the other. So you have to really get down eye level and make sure that you have the same amount of each. And when they're separate, they don't react, so they clean up real well. I'm gonna grab a baby wipe to clean up my mess that I made here. And you just wipe off the edges. And then once you pour them together, that's when they react. So I am going to take my part A and pour it in a little bit to my part B, just to show you guys. Can you see how much thicker the part A is? And now I'm going to pour it into a cup that you cannot see. Just because this cup is larger and I can do a lot of mixing. And this is when you really want to get all your edges scraped. Really do a good job of mixing. And you're going to want to mix for 3 to 5 minutes. You really want to mix this stuff until it is nice and mixed up. And often, if you watch the video of how to resin, they'll have you put it into a whole separate cup and mix again. So put it in this cup, mix it up, and then pour it into another cup and mix it, just to make sure that it's nice and mixed together. So I'm trying to get every last drop of this part B hardener into the part A so that I have equal parts of both. Okay, once I'm pretty sure that I have that, it's just all about the mixing. It's going to be harder for you to see in this cup, but basically you want to vigorously mix it back and forth, but you don't want to create more bubbles, so you don't want to whip it around. You just want to scrape and stir, scrape and stir. And eventually, after they're mixed up, they're going to turn cloudy and then it'll get clear again. And once it's clear again, it's typically ready to go. And like I said, that takes about 3 to 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, once you've got your concoction, your part A and part B tabletop epoxy or art resin epoxy, if you choose to use that, mixed together thoroughly, then you're going to start pouring your resin over your project. Like I said, I want nice, thin, even coat, a nice thin, even coat of the epoxy. And I'm not sure if this leaks or not. Hopefully it doesn't leak, so I have something underneath so that it's not going to leak down on a table or anything that I'm trying to protect. And I'm gonna go with my hand and spread this nice thin coat, completely covering the entire piece. Now you can use, they have a sponge. You can get these all over too. These came with the kit. You can use your sponge and create a nice smooth surface with your sponge. I'm using my fingers and I'm trying to spread it out evenly over the entire piece. Resin is self-leveling, so once I'm done getting it fairly level myself, I can feel the smooth resin as it's spreading out. Once I get it all spread out, then you have to put it on a completely flat, even surface to make sure that it's gonna not pool up in one area or another. And it will self-level, but you are gonna want to help it spread out to every edge, every corner, and make sure you get resin all over the entire piece, because my piece is just getting this nice thin layer on it. It's actually looking quite wiggly as I spread it with my hands. So I'm really trying to make sure that I'm not missing any piece. If you don't coat it, it will look wiggly when it dries, when it cures and sets up. If you don't get a nice even coat, you can get divots and dimples in your finished application. So smoothing it out is important, even though it does self-level. Now I'm seeing a lot of bubbles. There's a couple ways that you can get rid of these. You're gonna have to be careful because I'm doing it on glass. So I don't want to heat my glass up too much for fear of breaking it. So I have a heat gun, and I will use my heat gun. You can see it's kind of wiggly in places, and you're going to see that on the glass, but it's looking pretty smooth. So you can use a heat gun, or you can use a butane torch, something that has an actual, like, can be a food torch. You can get them at kitchen stores, or it can be an actual, like, welding type torch, not as heavy duty, they're smaller. Or this heat gun works fairly well. Again, I'm just gonna hit it just to pop the bubbles and try not to get it too close to my edges. I still have quite a bit of this made up. I'm gonna put on another pair of gloves, and I'm gonna do my other piece as well. So I will use that up. I didn't do too much. I did too much for this one project. Okay, so I'm gonna hit it with the heat gun just to pop those bubbles. Again, not leaving it in any one place too long, because this heat gun gets super hot, red hot. And typically you can move your resin around a bit with the heat of the gun. Again, I don't know how much I'd want to do that on this particular project, because I do not want to hurt my glass. So I did most of my spreading with my fingers, and I'm watching the bubbles pop, constantly keeping this moving. There is a bubble there, it's not wanting to pop. I'm going to keep hitting it until I can see it literally looks like glass. And then when this sets, it should protect the transfer. Might be a little something in there. It'll protect the transfer and it will be nice and easy to clean. Yeah, there was something in my resin. So be sure that when you're working with your resin, you have a nice clean space, and when you're leaving it wherever you're going to leave it overnight, that you're protecting it from dust. And dust particles can ruin projects. So pet hair, dust, you know, you just want to make sure it's in a nice, secure location, protected from all that. Okay, so now my project looks like glass, literally. It's going to be see-through. It's going to be beautiful, easy to clean, and protected. And depending on the type of resin you use, it should protect it also from the elements. This is a countertop, like I said, a tabletop resin. Not a deep pour. You don't want anything that is called deep pour, because then it requires a thickness, I think, of 2 inches is what it is. And see, it's like glass, literally like glass. So I'm gonna mess with this a little bit more, make sure all the bubbles are popped, and set it aside and not touch it until tomorrow. I'm gonna try to make sure that it's even, however it's sitting, that it's even, and it's in a nice clean area. So that is going to sit overnight, and then I will do the reveal and we'll see how it turned out. Okay, so it is 24 hours since I put the resin on the pieces. I used approximately 12 ounces of resin, 6 of each part A and part B. And now we're gonna show you what that 12 ounces did. So typically I use up the rest of it in molds, and it does take longer than a quick acting resin, but it'll still work as a mold resin. So I'll show you, I'll tip you down and show you what this 12 ounces did. So first of all, here is our window. It has the resin on it. You're not gonna see too much other than it's clear, and it will beautifully protect that transfer and make it so that it's easy to clean. So there is the resin on, nice thin coat on a window. And then with that same 12 ounces, I took it and did the top to this paper decoupage. It is a recycled decoupage paper that I then added some paint to the edge to make it wider. It didn't quite reach. And then I put the resin on the top. So that is the Farm Animals recycled decoupage paper, available on my website. And then here are the IOD molds. You can see where I put the excess resin into these molds. I get that question often. Can you use tabletop or art resin in molds? You can. They just take quite a bit longer to set up than if you're using the amazing casting resin, which is the resin that sets up white, and it sets up in about 10 to 15 minutes. So this is still pliable and workable, and you can use it and paint it on any of your home decor or furniture. So I did that one mold. I had enough to do a small little floral. This mold is from the Trimmings 3 IOD mold, and you'll see where I've used paper clay or air dry clay, and I then put some cornstarch in it. You do not need that when you're doing any type of resin. It will not stick to the mold, and it will release as soon as it is set. So there's a nice little shell. And this one is from the acanthus IOD mold. So just a few extra pieces, and I can use these at another time. And then we did the glass and the tray. So all of that for about 12 ounces of resin. So that is it for today. That's the tutorial on resin. This is, again, tabletop resin, so you can embed images into your resin, let it cure overnight. You can put art, glass over this decoupage paper, all sorts of things. And you can watch me do a lot of lives if you're on Facebook. I do Facebook lives, or visit my other YouTube tutorials. So again, I'm Tracy with the Rhapsody Art Barn. Everything is on my website, rhapsodyartbarn.com. Have a great day.